Yeah, like I said. Boy, howdy.
I hear you're loaded up on a What? I hear you got a full load of black paint there. Purple stuff.
That's high tech. That's Robert Shaw, wrote the Bible in ACA. Fighter combat tactics and maneuvering. And again, I can barely talk at this point at the con.
Special guest speaker today is Mr. Bob Shaw. And I use the term Mr. loosely, but his handle is Mouse. He's been in online flight sim community for a number of years. You guys don't know what really effect he had on WarBirds, but when I was originally working on what makes an airplane fly, Bob and I had discussions for hours on end on the phone, and I'd like, Bob, when you like lift your aileron, what happens? And it's like, well, the plane rolls. We got along the aerodynamics that way. But he's been active in the community. You know, pretty much everybody who flies for a long time gets their book, and today he's going to give us a talk on conducting an air combat mission versus 1v1. So let's welcome Mr. Bob Shaw.
Show this video anywhere.
God, it's the theme of the day, man.
Oh my God.
No, it's rated PG for content.
See, I'm not the only one.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. They gave me kind of a tough act to follow with Colonel Cobles. Thanks a lot.
I really appreciate that. And just to start off, I was never shot at. For real, as far as I know. So I don't have any war story, any real war stories. But I got in trouble a lot. We can talk about those. I think we can, statute of limitations is over. First, I'd just like to comment that I was really impressed. I went to all the lectures today, and I was really impressed with the quality of all of them. So you guys never cease to amaze me. It's like being in a fighter squadron, only a little more booze. Put down that bomb. Okay, they asked me to talk, I'm not exactly sure why, but how to conduct a 1 versus 1 air combat mission. So I don't know how much interest there actually is in that topic, so I will just kind of zip on through it fairly lightly and hopefully leave a little time if you want to talk about anything else, you know, fighter tactics or why I'm not in jail or who my cellmates were, any of that. We can do that. So these slides were loaned to me by Fighter Pilots USA. That's why the advertisement up there. There are 1,000 ways to conduct an air combat training mission, probably as many as there are people who do it. So I'm just going to kind of go through the way they do it, which is as good as any. And then if you want to talk about exceptions and how to do different things, we can do that later. Although this slide is backwards.
Russian.
These airplanes are flying backwards. These are Marchetti 260s. That's what what fighter pilots use. They have 260 horsepower and side-by-side seating. We probably, before we're done, I'll talk about side-by-side versus tandem a little bit. Okay, just kind of these are actually the slides that they use to do mass sort of briefings. So they'll have sometimes they'll have groups in of as
many as 16 or 20 people that they're going to fly in one day. So when they do that, to keep things moving right along, they usually have a mass briefing of all the people the night before, and then just really kind of quickie safety brief before the flight the next day. Okay, so an overview of a typical mission briefing. Talk about mission objectives and terminology. We have our own lingo in this business, like most every other business. Got to understand the talk. Go over a mission profile. Discuss basic fighter maneuvers a little bit, so they'll know what they're seeing and know what they're trying to do. Rules of engagement and crew coordination briefings. We don't get too heavily into tactics in these things. Kind of depends on the audience, basically the pilots that are going through these. A lot of them have never been in a light airplane before, so we have to start out pretty basic, like this is a stick. You know, this is a stick, and big trees, little trees, that sort of thing. Kind of at that level. So a briefing can go on for a long time if you get very deep. Okay, mission objectives there. Number one is to kill the bandit. Number two is to survive. Now, that's their mission objectives, but the instructor's objectives are reversed. In order to kill the bandit, you have to keep the tally-ho. I don't have to explain to you what that means, but we have to explain to them what that means, normally. We want to develop and execute a game plan, take valid shots, and we have to define those, and we'll do that here. And to survive, we also have to keep sight of the guy and neutralize him, and then don't ever give up. So we have to explain what neutralize the bandit means, and who a bandit is, and stuff like that to these folks, normally. Okay, mission profile. To start out with ground operations. The ground operations are basically the briefing and getting the people fitted up with helmets and flight suits and things. Briefing normally takes about an hour or so, and sometimes they use these slides and sometimes they don't. They'll go out and get in the airplane. Sometimes they bring people with them. They want pictures taken and that sort of thing, which is kind of fun. Have a little picture taking session before you go up and turn green so that the colors work out. The instructors do all the taxiing and takeoff and ground operations of the airplane. Taxi, takeoff, and landing. Other than that, they try to let the guest pilots do as much flying as they want to do. The more the better. Also, the formation work when we're within about 50 feet of the other airplane. The instructor pilots fly the airplane. At least we're supposed to fly the airplane. If the person that's flying has flown before and wants to try it, we'll let them fly formation also. We do a guns tracking exercise on the way out to the area, which is maybe 30 miles or so from the field. Guns tracking exercise is just kind of a tail chase. You get in a good guns firing position, which is about 500 to 800, 500, 700 feet or something like that, behind the other airplane, behind his wing line. And then let the airplane out in front, do kind of gentle maneuvers, maybe 45 degrees angle of bank back and forth, and the other airplane practices putting him in the gun sight and holding him there, and calling guns, guns, guns. There are two buttons on the stick. There's a trigger in front, a microphone button on top, and the idea is that you squeeze them both at the same time, call guns, guns, guns on the radio so that the other guy can tell he's been shot. And he can look back and see what it looks like when the guy is shooting him. Those of you who've flown WarBirds for a while, tracking a target comes fairly naturally. But it's not so natural a thing to think about it. Because airplanes only turn up. They don't turn sideways like cars, they only turn up. And so you have to make the target up if you want to put the target in the gun, in the gun sight. Flying along like this, target up like this, you want to put him in the gun sight. How do you do that? Well, you have to roll and put him perpendicular to the wings, basically put him on the lift vector, sound familiar, and then pull. So it's going to look like he's above the gun sight, and then you pull him down into the gun sight. So the airplane is really only turning up. The target's always coming to the gun sight from the top down. So you have to teach them that technique and let them practice it a little bit. It's pretty natural once they've seen it happen and get a chance to practice it. But we do that for a minute or two per guy, and then we'll swap off and put the other one in behind and let him do the guns tracking exercise, him or her, and until they get the idea. And then we swap back again, and then we do what we call an offensive and defensive perch setup. Starts out the same way with one guy in a guns tracking situation behind the other. This one is obviously offensive, this one is defensive. It's called a perch because you're kind of sitting up like you're a vulture, on a perch, you're going to jump on the guy. And this time the maneuvering is more radical. There's really no limit to the maneuvering in this case. And the idea is to try to actually spit the guy out and keep him from shooting him in this case. And this is where we get to show them, demonstrate, and show them high yo-yos and low yo-yos and that sort of thing. So we'll get up to 2 or 3 Gs or something sometimes during these exercises. When they get the idea, then we swap positions and do it again. And then we do what we call neutral butterfly setups. In this case, we have an offensive and a defensive player. It's pretty obvious who's going to win this unless somebody really screws up, right? So these are just training exercises. So to make things fairer, for the neutral setups, we turn away from each other, drive out here to just about the limits of visibility, probably 2-3 miles or something. You have to kind of squint a little bit with my eyes in order to keep sight of the guy. And then you turn in and you pass left to left about 500 feet. And if you're not shooting, we call flights on when you pass wings level like this.
Late turn.
Right. And then it's every man for himself, basically. And we try to do 3 of those. So that's what we call the butterfly setups. Because if you draw that maneuver on the chalkboard, it looks kind of like a butterfly. So use your imagination. Okay, and then after we've done that, we join back up again. Fly back to the field. Sometimes we have time to do some aerobatics if they're still feeling good and want to do that. We do it, so we call it battle damage check. The guy joining on the other one will go up underneath the other airplane back and forth, kind of check, make sure all the big pieces are still hanging on there, not leaking anything or pieces falling off. And then we'll swap the lead. We'll do a battle damage check on the other airplane. And then back in formation. Coming to the traffic pattern, formation works. We like to try to get a picture of the other airplane on the guy's cockpit camera. So we'll kind of fly a stepped up close formation like this because we have a camera on the right side of the cockpit taking a picture of the pilot, and the left side, the guest pilot. Of course, it takes a picture of whatever's behind him too. So if you got an airplane sitting up like this, it makes a nice, pretty picture. Sometimes we try to do a Hollywood peel off out here so that you get that on film too. Okay, come back to the traffic pattern. Again, it kind of depends on where they're operating. They operate in Kissimmee and Orlando, and then they also operate in Chicago. In Chicago in the summertime when it's too hot in Orlando to breathe. It's a little looser in Chicago because they operate from a non-controlled field, and so we can do a little bit more radical sort of stuff. But our favorite entry is get together, come down final, just about as fast as it'll go, about 200 knots, something like that, right on the deck. Slip right down the runway, it's about 30 feet or so. And we get close to the end of the runway, we turn the smoke on and do a peel up like this. It's a downwind, drop the gear and flaps, come around and land. And then we come back in, another photo session before we go back in. We'll go back in and play the videos. We've got 3 cameras in the airplane, either 2 or 3 depending on the airplane. Always got one that shoots out through the gun sight and one in the cockpit that takes a picture of the guest pilot. And one of the airplanes has a camera in the tail that kind of a fisheye out forward, down on top of the airplane and out forward. So we play the tapes. We try to sync the 2 tapes up and play those, and we'll show them what we all kind of go through the mission, and then we try to score the 3 neutral setups and tell them who won if there's any doubt. And then we drink beer and laugh and scratch and tell lies and give everybody a call sign, usually based on something stupid they did, or a play on their name or something like that. And the less they like the call sign, the more likely it is to stick. Got a good call sign story too, I need to tell you. Okay, terminology, we go through all this stuff, but hopefully you all know this stuff, so I won't dwell on it. This is what the cockpit looks like.
Side-by-side seating. This is the side the instructor sits on. That's the side that the guest pilot sits on. We have 2 throttles. Throttle quadrant here. Got the throttle, the prop, and the mixture is the fuel selector over here. The guest pilot has a second throttle on the left side, so both pilots have throttles on the left where they ought to be. And the rest of the stuff is kind of unnecessary.
I must say, it's a real pain in the butt not having an airspeed on the left-hand side of the airplane. That is a real pain.
Yeah. Or just ask your instructor to call airspeeds for you. That's really better because you're not looking at the cockpit. It's kind of like your own verbal HUD. High tech. Or high tech. Side-by-side seating. I've flown with, this is the second company that I've flown with doing this sort of thing. The first one flew T-34s up in Ohio. A friend of mine put it together. Flew with him for a while, and that's obviously a tandem front-back seater trainer. This one is an Italian trainer. It's used by, I think, 26 countries or something. It's for military trainers, designed to do this sort of thing. Stress for 6 Gs, and you can do 236 knots, I think, and 3 negative Gs, but let's not go there. Retractable gear, low wing, as you saw with tip tanks on the end. Probably the most distinctive thing about it really is the fact that it's side-by-side seating. I wasn't sure I would like side-by-side seating for air combat because I'd never flown a side-by-side airplane doing air combat, and there's a real drawback in that, if you're sitting on the left and you got an instructor sitting on the right, the visibility for you is not real great out the right side of the airplane. And that can cause a problem in air combat. You wouldn't want a fighter that way, for instance. You don't want him to know that you're always going to turn left, for instance. But you'll notice that all the flights start generally turning left because that's the side that the guest pilots are sitting on. As it turns out, the visibility is so good in this airplane that the big bubble canopy that it really doesn't cause much of a problem. And the visibility is probably very nearly as good as it was in the tandem T-34. But there is an advantage in that you're sitting right next to the person, right next to the guest pilot. I think it tends to give the guest pilots a little more sense of security. If they've never flown before, and they can actually feel and touch someone there who is, supposed to going to save their butt if they need it. And so I think that may be a positive. We can also, the instructors also have a little bit better view of what's going on with the guest pilot. We can see color changes and that sort of thing a little bit better. Although you can kind of see them from the back of the neck in a T-34 too, and underneath the helmet. But you can really tell if someone is not feeling well and about how well they're feeling and that sort of stuff, sitting next to them a little bit better. One other consideration is if someone panics and freezes on the controls in an inconvenient time, you have a better chance of getting the controls away from them, I think, than you do if you're in the back seat and you can't reach them. So, that's never happened to me, but I guess it did happen to one or two people, has happened to one or two people. Okay, here they are again. They're really sweet little airplanes. They've got nice performance, really good roll, and very responsive. You know, it is just like flying a fighter. Okay, this is about as sophisticated as we get when we're talking fighter tactics with these guys. We explain high yo-yos, low yo-yos. We try to tell them about putting the lift vector on and off and the effects that has. We have to explain to them what a lift vector is, obviously. Lag pursuit rolls, barrel roll attacks, we consider kind of postgraduate stuff. It's a little more complex, three-dimensional sort of thing, and normally on a first air combat tactics ride, they're not going to do that. So if the situation arises that we can demonstrate it in the air, or if it's the right thing to do, we might coach them through one, but we're probably not going to dwell on it. They may not see it. I guess the last time I flew, we got in a good situation for a lag pursuit roll. The best situation for that is you're real close, you've got your nose in front of me, but you're inside gun range and you're closing like that. So it's a low angle off, overshoot sort of situation. Lag pursuit roll is used to maintain your nose to tail distance, mainly to stop that closure, to maintain an offensive position so you don't go shoot by the guy and end up in a bad way, so that you just roll over him like this, and now you're back behind him again, and probably you can't see it either because you're in lag pursuit. It's a real nice maneuver for that. So we were able to do that on the last mission that I flew, but that's kind of unusual. Yo-yos. This is one of the quotes from my book. You'd be amazed at how many people don't know this is a joke.
Oh, man.
And actually, I think in my book it says it's a Chinese fighter pilot. And that's a dead giveaway because Noritake is Japanese. So, anyway, I saw this somewhere back before I wrote my book, so I threw it in there.